My name is Dr. Jacqueline Malley, and I am an AARP Hawaii volunteer from Kaneohe. It's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of AARP, of Windward Community College, and the Kaunoa Senior Center on Maui. This is part of a 6-part series. You should have received a recipe ahead of time with your confirmation email, and we encourage you to cook along with a chef or try the recipe afterwards. AARP is a membership organization for people 50 years old or older. Our goal is to empower people to choose how they want to live as they age. Our hope is that with this series, you can learn some techniques that you can build or maintain a healthy lifestyle. Now, let's do a quick bit of housekeeping. This is a picture that you should have, and if you scroll across the bottom of your screen, you can see a number of little symbols and so forth. Everybody is currently muted, and we're going to keep it that way during the presentation. If you want to submit a question, please click on the little bubble that looks like two people having a conversation. It says Q&A, and your question will be forwarded to Dan at that particular point. You type in the question, and then please remember to hit enter. That was my problem before. I forgot that little thing. We also recommend that you view this presentation on speaker view. And to get there, you please go up to the right-hand corner of your screen and you see the word speaker view. Click on it. That will give you a whole big picture of what you're seeing. And now it is my very, very distinct pleasure to introduce Chef Daniel Swift. He will lead you through this series of cooking, and you are in for a real treat. Enjoy.
55, maybe 160. I tested these today when I did some practice runs with the rice, and the thermometer was reading 180, 170. It depended on the machine. So we've got it just finished cooking, so you know that it's at about 190, 195 because it was boiling, and water boils at 212 and it's cooled slightly. So you really just want to get ready, have all your ingredients together. One's going to be the tofu, one will be the shrimp, but they'll both get vegetables. So I'll start with this one first and get my vegetables ready. And you can see as it opens up, you get the steam. And this is where you want to come in and put a nice layer of vegetables down. And I'm going to just use the tofu that's not been seared. Put that right in there. Couple slices of the lemon, and then I close it right away. Now you need 15 to 25 minutes, depending on the item. Really, the tofu just needs to be warmed up. The next one would be the shrimp, same thing. You see that heat, but we don't want to leave it open for a long period of time and lose that. We want to add the vegetables as quickly as we can. And then we'll place the shrimp right on top. And if you want to make it look pretty, maybe you could even actually serve it in this dish or in the pot, depending on how many folks are at the house. And again, the lemon on top for that. And then I just close it. And again, this just needs to sit, 15 to 20, 25 minutes, it depends. And I have some earlier that I had started, and it should be ready. Let's hope. I gotta just grab this cooker right here. Can you see that, Carolyn? Does that work? All right. So this went off at just right at about 5 o'clock. So maybe it was 2 minutes to 5. And while they were doing the introduction, I quickly loaded it with vegetables, same exact vegetables, same exact setup, but I put the tofu and also the shrimp inside. Right. So then it's steamed in there. I have the lemons, I have the herbs on top, and then I can work to do the plating. So it's up to you how you want to do it. I was just going to put it on one platter. This could be dished out individually as well. I'm going to try to save those lemons so that they look nice and put it across the side here with the tofu's nice and warm. Load the shrimp out. And a combination is fine if you're going to do both items. And then, of course, we have our vegetables lightly steamed. They keep the color really nice here, which is good. And then what I can show you here is the ginger. So those are the 2 large pieces of ginger that I placed in there. I don't want to serve them, so I'm going to actually just put them to the side. And that allows me to then just come back down to my rice, break it up a little bit. And serve the rice. Now you will get some of the flavor, not only from the ginger, but also from the vegetables. And depending on what you're putting in there, if it's a really wet vegetable or if it's something like spinach, you might get the juices coming out of that and seeping into the rice, which is really, really nice sometimes. So it just depends on what you're looking for. So we have the nice platter. Shout out to the Hilton Hawaiian Village for donating these plates from the old Golden Dragon at the Hawaiian Village years ago. Some of you may remember. And then I have some parsley. I was just going to use a little bit as a garnish if I were serving this family style. I'll normally also come back and do a little bit of seasoning on top. So a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and a little bit of lemon juice across the top. And then that would be our finished dish that comes out like that. So again, a really, really simple technique. You may need to practice and experiment a little bit with your rice cooker at home. Different ones, like I said, hold at different temperatures. So if you were to start out with tofu, that would probably be the best bet. Start out with the tofu and smaller cut vegetables so that you make sure that they get cooked thoroughly. And then you can determine how long items need to stay to make those adjustments so that you can end up with the perfectly cooked shrimp or perfectly cooked vegetables or fish. So, all right. Am I on time? Is that close?
You are so on time. So
5:29, all right, that's perfect. So we do have time for some questions. If there are still any questions out there, I'd be happy to answer them.
There are so many questions. So folks, my name is Jackie Boland. I'm the Community Outreach Director for AARP Hawaii, and I'm going to be funneling some of these questions through. So one person asked early on, do you put less water in if you're just doing white rice?
I always recommend when you're cooking rice to follow the guidelines of the brand that you're buying. I can tell you I've experienced everything from 6-to-1 water to rice with wild rice to 1-to-1 with some white rices. Every rice is a little bit different. And the recommendation I always have is to follow the instructions on the package. Now you do always use a little bit more water when you're doing the whole grain like brown rices. So the white rice in this case will be a little softer than I would probably normally like it, but we like the crunch of the brown, and they tend to accent each other really well. So your best bet is always to just follow the instructions that come with the brand of rice that you get.
Okay, and then somebody asked, Linda asked, are tomatoes too acidic? Can you use this recipe with tomatoes?
Nope, actually tomatoes would be great. I almost put them in today because we had some in the cooler. That almost, if you think about it, if you use tomatoes and you use garlic that was slivered or sliced or diced, olive oil and a little bit of melted butter, and parsley, you could almost do like a shrimp scampi. So that absolutely could go in into the dish for sure.
Terrific. Now, folks, I want to let you know that we promised you a 30-minute demo, and we're at about 30 minutes, but we're willing to stay on for up to 15 more to answer questions. So if you don't want to hear the questions, the demonstration is over, but I have several more questions. Magda would like to know, how do you caramelize the tofu?
There's two ways really in the oven. What we do in the cafe here, we do larger volume. So we'll just take a large sheet pan, we'll dry the tofu. As I mentioned before, we'll actually spray it with olive oil. They have some really good olive oil sprays today. So if you're watching your fat intake, one thing I recommend is you just buy the spray or even some pumps they have for olive oil. And then we season it and we go into an oven 450 degrees until it caramelizes. You can also do it in a saute pan. I recommend a non-stick. Don't try it with a regular saute pan. It would probably stick and just crumble as you try to flip it. But a little bit of oil in the bottom of a non-stick and dropping the tofu in there will caramelize it. And then it changes the flavor like anything. Poached chicken versus grilled chicken. It's two totally different tastes in a way. So this is a really good way to get a little bit extra flavor into your dish.
And Lou is asking, can you do that with sesame oil before
Yep.
steaming? Yep.
Absolutely. As you move forward, like doing this sort of thing, this technique, I guess I would call it, right? I always try to provide just roadmaps for folks, right? So we learned a technique this evening. So the rice is up to you. The ginger or the garlic or the turmeric, whatever you want to put in to flavor the rice is up to you, or nothing, just straight white rice or straight brown rice. The vegetables are up to you. The protein is up to you. The fat that you use, whether it's sesame oil, olive oil, or whatever, is also up to you. It's just the technique that you sort of want to focus on first so that you understand it and then experiment. This would be incredible with sesame oil, with the shrimp, with broccoli, you know, just think of it your favorite stir-fry dish. So yeah, absolutely.
And Daniel, going back to the tofu at 450 degrees, how long are you cooking that?
I think I want to make sure I tell you right. I put it in the recipe. I think I did. Until golden brown. For us, our ovens are a little stronger, maybe high power, and we have a large fast fan in there. It takes us probably 15 minutes. So at home, it would probably be about the same. You just have to watch it. So don't put it on parchment paper or anything, it will burn, because when you're working at a higher temperature, you don't want to do that. Just oil it, put it on an oiled pan or aluminum foil and in the oven at 450 until it's the color that you like. So a lot of times you can't really go by time, you just sort of have to watch it, right?
Okay, and then we have a lot of questions about technique here. So you're using the residual steam from the rice, not the steam that's happening while the rice is cooking?
That's correct.
And so how long for the type of vegetables that you just cut, how long are you leaving those in?
This batch that we just did was 30 minutes. I put it in at about 2 minutes to 5. I took it out about 28 minutes after. I'm looking at the shrimp and it looks pretty darn perfect. I could see one earlier that was layered and kind of buried, and it's not as thoroughly cooked through as it was. I probably would leave it for another 5 minutes or so. So that's sort of up to you. And again, it's up to your rice cooker. So when you're dealing with tofu or vegetables, it doesn't matter. You can eat them all raw and cold. If you're moving into shrimp, Actually, shrimp, medium rare, medium, no problem for me. But that's again why I said stay away from chicken or poultry or things that need to go higher. As I mentioned, I put a thermometer in this rice cooker earlier when I shut it off, and it was at 170 for this particular one. The other thing you want to keep in mind, if you're taking like cold shrimp or frozen shrimp, it wouldn't work. You want to temper your product so that it's room temperature before it goes in. If it's coming in cold, it's going to suck the heat out of your rice cooker and it'll take a lot longer. But these will always hold at about 160, depends on the brand, but that's enough to cook thoroughly pretty much any protein that you're working with for this particular technique.
Okay, and to make a stretch here, we promoted this as a how to cook a meal in your rice cooker, but several people are asking, could I use my Instant Pot steam function? Somebody else said I bake rice. Somebody else does it on the stove top. Can you address any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's in a pot or stove, so stove top or in the oven would be in a pan more than likely. You don't get as much residual carryover. So what I would recommend with the oven is you then shut it off when it's done. You load it up and you put it back in the oven as the oven starts to cool down, and watch it that way. On the stove top, it would probably be a little difficult because you're shutting it off and you have no residual heat. So that would make it a little difficult. Instapots and pressure cookers, I mean, they're all fancy schmancy today, so I'm sure there is a technique for that. As a matter of fact, most of these rice cookers will have a little mesh screen you can put in the bottom, boil water, and it's a steamer. So yeah, absolutely. Both of those previous techniques would work, but I don't think the stovetop one would probably work. You could try putting it on low, but that's a real tough one. But they also make, the microwave versions of rice that's already pre-cooked that you might be able to work with a little bit.
Excellent. And I know you've mentioned that people can use fish, but people keep asking, can I use fish? So maybe you could tell
absolutely.
us what your favorite fish, or in my mind, this would be a great recipe for mahi-mahi.
Yeah, mahi-mahi. Any lean fish would work. I wouldn't use tuna. Actually, salmon would work as well, which is not a lean fish. But the important thing with the fish that you would use for this particular dish is that you make sure that it's not too thick. You wouldn't want to get a thick halibut steak and put it in there. It would take too long to cook. So you're better off with the slightly thinner version. And most of the recipes that we've prepared for the series are estimating about 4.5 ounces of protein per person. So that would kind of give you the guide. So basically a pound would be enough for 3 people. So you need about 1.5 pounds with shrinkage to get the portion that you would need. And then if you're,
making
if
sure
it's
that
just
we're all
one
healthy.
or two, yeah, I was gonna say if there's only 1 or 2 people at home and you're using a really small rice cooker, like a 3-cup rice cooker, I would recommend you just cut that recipe in half. Because if you overload it and you can't shut the lid, it kind of create a problem.
Excellent. And okay, so Lou is saying, can the veggies be added just before the rice cooker goes off?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. If you want to set a timer so that you have 5 minutes left or something like that, absolutely, you could do that. If you were, say, going to use, and I think I put in the recipe, frozen vegetables, and you didn't want to thaw them, you could do it 7 minutes before the rice is done, keeping in mind that, it's going to cool it down, but you'll still have the heat from the bottom. So, I mean, the beautiful thing about this really is that it's kind of a fun technique that it's a spin on what a lot of people in Hawaii and around the world do every single day, or if not that, every few days, right? There's always a pot of rice or a rice cooker going. So this is just a way to kind of build a meal around it. Theoretically, you could walk away and come back 2 hours later and have your meal. Maybe you go to the beach or do whatever, go for your walk, come back, and your dinner will be ready. So that's sort of the genesis for this technique, was to make it convenient and easy and utilize a tool that most people have in their kitchens already.
Okay, so let's take one last question that everybody's asking is, what is in the Ooh, Alles blend seasoning. If they can't buy it, how can they make it, or
Oh,
what's in it?
you can buy it. Just call me. No.
Do you make, and somebody
Unless
did say
Artis is on
well,
here. If you are Artis, I didn't mean that. That's my boss.
so they also want to know if you can mail it, but what are the primary spices or herbs that you're using in there?
Yeah, we're not set up to do mailing yet, but I think with COVID, UH is moving quicker than they were in the past on things like that. So stay tuned. You can visit our website. If you just go to Uwala Leaf Cafe, Google search, and it'll pull up our location, how to get here, and all that information. So I'll read these ingredients for you guys. Just garlic, onion, moringa, parsley, kanei, mamaki, olena leaf, uwala leaf, seaweed, and black pepper. Those are the ingredients in this particular one. We also have a taco seasoning. We have an all-purpose seasoning. We have about 3 or 4 different seasonings currently. And Mahana Beamer is the one that created most all of these formulas, and she's an outstanding chef. She's worked all over the state, and yeah, we would love to have you guys come in and try it. I think this is $7. Is that what it is? $7 for this, but this has no salt in it. This is just pure spice. And we make a larger container where it's the spice mixed with salt, so it's a seasoned salt.
Okay, so Daniel, any last tips before we end our program?
No, I'll just remind you that next week is poke, so Hawaiian style poke, and it's going to be the same thing next week as it will be through the entire series, where it's, we kind of break down poke into its components. You can make an incredibly delicious tofu poke, shrimp poke. I mean, as we all know that there's limitless varieties, but it's a really, really simple, fresh, healthy, and easy way to make a really nice lunch or dinner. Probably not breakfast. I don't know. I guess it depends. But I would just invite everybody to join us next week. And I just want to say thank you to Jackie and to Carolyn, who you can't see, who's supposed to be toggling between the cameras, but since the mic didn't work, I guess we'll see what happens. We'll try to improve it every single week, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. And don't forget to go to AARP.org/HI to find out all of the great, cool, exciting stuff that's taken place in the state through AARP.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks to all of you. We look forward to seeing you next week. Happy cooking.
All right. Aloha, everyone.